Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Allen. How's it going, man?
I'm going back to the original mic that I tried like years ago. I've just been so sick of having to edit my own audio because it sounds terrible. So hopefully this time it'll sound better. I think you said it sounds better, so hopefully that actually comes out on the other side.
I've learned that my ear for these things is not very good. I think it's gotten better, but I think as we've gone through this podcast journey, I've learned that I have certain strengths and weaknesses, and my ability to pick out certain like small details that you're really good at, especially when it comes to audio quality, is not one of
I'm definitely just insane though. Like I,
them.
I know that like to most people it's not a big deal, but to me it will keep me up at night. It'll be at like 4 a.m. I'll be staring at the wall. I'll be like, the audio quality had this too much reverb, and like I just know it will bother me. So it's more like that you're a normal person and I'm just insane. So
Well, hey, I think that's a good way to lead off this podcast. I'm normal. Garrett is insane. I think that's a good way for us to frame all of these discussions moving forward. But so we obviously have prenats to talk about, a ton of very interesting results on both the men and women's sides that we will dig into. We will wrap up with a quick discussion on the Princeton Fall Classic, which also had some top teams competing and some interesting results there as well. Before we get into all that, we did get another rating and review on both, or just rating on Apple and Spotify. So we're up to 98 on Apple, 2 away from that 100 number, and up to 170 on Spotify. So nice little bump up on both of those, which is great to see. Just a reminder to leave a rating or review on both of those platforms and subscribe and follow us on YouTube. But with all of that said, let's just jump into these results at prenats because man, these were some interesting races on from an individual perspective, from a team perspective. There's a lot to dive into, and let's start on the women's side where we saw BYU take what like ended up being a commanding victory
mhm.
in this race, winning 105 to Washington's 157. Northern Arizona dropping all the way back to third in 166. And it was really so I wasn't able to catch this race live, but fastidiously avoided all the results. Watched it this morning, just complete with a completely clean slate. And I was just, as I'm going through, I'm like, all right, so Northern Arizona won. And I'm just going to see where BYU lands. And as the race just keeps going, keeps going, I was like, maybe BYU is going to sneak up on them. But it wasn't until I checked the final results that I realized that BYU had won because the individual race was so tight, and it just seemed like Northern Arizona had such a stronghold. I'm not sure if that was kind of how you were feeling as you were watching this race.
Yeah, I think I felt pretty like I think I definitely maybe gave BYU more of a chance earlier on than maybe
Sure.
in your like recollection cycle, just because like the presence, the upfront presence was not
Yeah.
nearly as significant for NAU, and especially when you realize like, hey, Stearns is not in these results, and then
No.
Balaga is not in these results, you're like, ooh, that's not great. And so that's where I think the biggest caveat in all this is like, I don't think NAU ran their best race. I think they ran clearly way better at Joe Piani. But like between a handful of their women not running, like they didn't run poorly, but they didn't run quite as well as I thought they were going to. And then B, you don't have two women who are arguably going to be your best two scores of the season. I was like, yeah, maybe my realization was a little bit earlier on to the race of like, this might be a little bit of a BYU favorable run for them.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't I don't think either of them ran like great. I think BYU ran well. I think both of the teams I think NAU has a lot more left to give. How concerned are you about the lack of Elise Stearns now this far into the season? I mean, they have a ton of depth, but she's that one woman that you really feel comfortable putting down a real low mark at nationals, and so I think her absence is one that they really could have like can't afford to lose. Really,
Yeah, I mean it's not great. Like I think there had been, hints by Mike Smith of like, hey, she'll be coming back for this fall, and that like I think the expectation, especially because she was in the she was in the entries,
Yeah.
where it was like, oh, she's going to be back, and she's still not. So I'm not giving up quite yet. I like to think NAU's like a pretty conservative, and they like to be careful about these things.
Yes.
But it's not great. It's not great at all, actually. And I think Balaga, knowing that she did run earlier this season, and that she was healthy enough, and that she's probably still going to be available for the postseason, that makes me like not want to panic about this result. But does it basically goes back to what we said 2 weeks ago, specifically what you said, which is, hey, the firepower in a larger field, BYU can capitalize on that. And that's exactly what happened. Even if this wasn't even BYU's best race, this is exactly what happened. You were the first to call it out.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I am fairly concerned about Northern Arizona at this point, because sure, Balaga can come back, but and maybe she is their lead scorer in this race, but I'm not sure if she's top 10 in this field. And if you're just giving up that many points in your first two runners, it's going to be extraordinarily difficult, very, very difficult. And that's why I think Stearns just looms so largely, because if she can come back, she's someone that can be a top 5, top 10 finisher in this kind of field. And that's what this lineup is desperately crying out for. So I'm probably on more of the panic side than you. Granted, I still think they are one of the top 2 teams in the country. Like, I'm not saying that I've adjusted my priors that much, but I think you have to, at least in my perspective, I think BYU has to enter nationals as the favorite now at this point.
Yeah. I think if I see that Stearns is at least like healthy and available, and we know that Balaga comes back, and we're assuming that she will, I will still keep NAU as my favorite. But if Stearns is
Interesting.
not there, I'm going to give it to BYU. It
Yeah.
really comes down to, I'm assuming Balaga will come back. That's my assumption. I think it's a fair
Yeah.
assumption. If Stearns is there and healthy enough, I will give the nod to NAU. But this was it was humbling for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. I still might even give BYU the edge, because, and let's just talk about them real quickly, because like I said, I think this was a good race. I don't think this was a spectacular race. I think Lexi Holiday Lowry was good, but not maybe as good as she could have been. She was ninth. Carmen
Mhm.
Alder 14th, Jenna Hutchins 20th, Riley Chamberlain 27th, and Neela Roberts putting down a good performance in 35th. I still feel like that like they could all be like 3 to 5 spots higher, like this entire lineup. And if you bump, maybe with the exception of like Roberts, I think all of these women could be a little bit better. And that's the scary thing, is they won going away with a, what would we say, a B plus, A minus performance.
I'd say yeah, I think that's fair. B plus, A minus. Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of the scary thing for the rest of the country, is like no one was able to get particularly close without them putting in an A plus effort. I don't know. I think I keep coming back to the fact I just see this team as the favorite now, and I think that Lexi Holiday Lowry is going to be even better at nationals. Now, I guess you could have a little bit of concern that, do you like, how many All Americans are we getting out of this lineup? Are we getting
3.
3? Yeah,
You're
and
definitely
that
getting
just
3.
feels kind of light for a national favorite, especially in years past where we've seen a lot of these teams put 4-5 people in that
I
top
mean,
40.
didn't NC State have 3 last
That's
year?
right. Yeah, that's true. But they had their 3 All Americans were like unbelievable.
Were they?
Well,
You
am I
had
thinking of the
Tui in
wrong year?
5th. Yeah, you're probably, yeah, they had Tui in 5th, and then they had like Bush and Tenissima just crack inside the top
Oh
30.
yeah,
Like
you're right. Yeah, because they scored what, like 100 something points last. Yeah, so that
121.
okay, last year was a high mark, like for a
It was
point
unusually
total.
high for sure. They scored
But
123, and they had Tui in 5th, and then they had Tenissima 25th, and then they had Bush in 28th.
yeah. So I mean, I think that's the structure, right, for BYU. Like I think that's probably how they're gonna hope their lineup plays out, right? And it seems like there isn't any team that is prepared to finish that much higher from a point perspective. If they can kind of replicate that NC State model, I think they're going to win the national championship.
I mean, I think they can replicate the NC State model, and I do think that Riley Chamberlain's 27th place finish is like a little bit underrated. Like she
Mhm.
was 29th at Joe Piani, and now she's 27th. Like 27th for like a lot of teams. Um, that is kind of like a fringe low stick result,
Sure.
right? And so I don't think I would count out Chamberlain from that All American conversation, right? Like if you think Maeve Styles and Maggie Congdon can be All Americans, then in theory that also means that you think
Yeah.
that Chamberlain should be an All American, who was one spot behind Alex Carlson, two spots behind Savannah Rourke, and three spots behind Bieke Shirburn. So something to consider there. I think also the other big part of here is that like BYU showed greater depth than I think we thought they had. Neil
Yep.
Roberts, their fifth runner in 35th, Taylor Rohotinsky in 40th, and Taylor Lovell in 46th. That's an entire top seven in the top 50, which is
Yeah.
really impressive.
Which, yeah, that's 7 in front of NAU's 5. Which, like we said, NAU's missing some pieces, but that just reflects the amount of depth that they have that they can match an NAU in from that perspective. So yeah, I agree. I think Riley Chamberlain's result, and that was one I wanted to highlight too. So I'm glad you did. Like this is what I was expecting coming into this year. Is I really thought that she could take a nice step forward and be someone that could be a fringe All American for them. And I think this was the result that finally showed that. So excited to see if she can continue to grow from this performance. Anything else from BYU NAU's perspective, and then we'll get into the runner up, Washington.
No, nothing further there.
All right, Washington put together a very good performance. Again, showcasing some great depth. Amina Matug, Sophia O'Sullivan are your fifth and sixth runners, neither of them running like very, very well. And it didn't really matter because Chloe Forrester continues to run exceptionally well. India Weir, 28th, great run for her. Maeve Styles, 30th. Julia David Smith, I not as maybe dynamic as a performance as she's had before, but the consistency I think is what we're really excited to see. Is she backed it up with another solid performance at 41st. There's a lot to like about this team because you put Matug, and again, maybe we're not going to get the best version of Matug, but if this was more of an off day for her and she's just going to grow into the season and be primed and ready to be All American Amina Matug when it comes to nationals, this is a team that I think might be a little underrated, and maybe it's a 3-team chase for the title.
I don't think the firepower is there for Washington to to be truly in contention for the title. I think Forrester's awesome. I think the best version of Matug is even more awesome.
Yeah,
Styles, I think we're still like trying to see like exactly how potent is she. Right,
sure.
30th is a good result, but it's not the eighth place finish that I think she had at the Nuttycombe Invite. So I kind of go back and forth on this. I think Washington is probably as close to a lock as you can get for the podium without being a
Sure.
national title favorite. So could they sneak in? Sure, but it would require like pretty much four of their runners having their very, very, very best day at the national meet.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, I think if Matug turns out to be the low stick that they thought they were getting, which again, maybe that ship has sailed in terms of she's just not going to be fit enough to be able to be that by the end of the season. But if she's that, then I mean, you plug her into the top 10 here, and then or top 15 here, and all of a sudden that gap isn't quite as wide as it might seem. And but I guess I hear you. I think you still need probably one of Weir or Styles or David Smith to have just an unbelievable day to give you another top scorer to go along with Matug and Forrester. But I don't necessarily. I think they're probably two women having unbelievable days away from being able to really challenge.
Yeah, listen, is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. Just like it's possible for Alabama, right?
Yes.
But
I think they're the big winners of all of this, honestly. Like
I think you're right.
I think Alabama's looking at these results and be like, I think we can handle a lot of these teams.
I'm so glad you said that. I completely agree. But conversation for them for another day, given that they didn't really
Yeah.
face anyone. But I want to move to fourth place though, West Virginia.
Story
Woo!
of the meet in my mind.
Absolutely story of the meet. Story of the meet. So here's the thing: Seela McCabe in fourth, great, not surprising. She's awesome. We know how good she is. Joy Nico, sure, whatever, I got it right. In 10th place. Tremendous, awesome. And I think we knew West Virginia had brought in a couple international names, and they brought in two actually, and Joy Nuckow being one of them, right? Her getting 10th, awesome, outstanding upper echelon low stick result. But they also brought in a woman named Tekla Lokira. I forget the name specifically. I don't have it off the top of my head. But they
Tekla
brought in
Locrale or something like
Lacrell,
that.
sure. Um, but I think we thought that she was going to be kind of that third low stick. She didn't even. She was a DNF, I think.
Yeah,
It
they
was a
had
DNF.
2 DNFs. They only had 5 finishers.
They had only 5 finishers. It was the group behind them that I was so impressed by. It was Emily Price in 50th place. It was Madison Trippett in 61st. And it was who else? Where else?
Sarah Tate.
Sarah Tate. Yes, thank you. Back in 82nd place. That is a tremendous back three. And they didn't have anyone else finish behind that five. The thing that scares me is that this team could get better. And that's what I would be terrified of if I'm another team trying to get on the podium.
Yeah, I don't think any team had a more impactful result this weekend in terms of what it means for the rest of their year than West Virginia did. If they don't, as long as they, I mean, this is a team that I don't know like about you, but this was a team that I was not penciling into the national meet necessarily. And I obviously not in a great region, so it was certainly possible. But the only way they don't make nationals is if they have like a fifth or worst place finish. Now they have guaranteed themselves so many Colas points, and that was with only 5 women finishing, which is the craziest thing. And now all of a sudden their sights, like you said, are going to be so much higher because they did this with 5 women crossing the line. If they have a little bit more depth, if some of these other women who did not finish, Alexis Lamb and Tekla Lacroix, can give them a little bit more than an 82nd place finish that Madison Trippett or Sarah Tate gave them, then I mean they're not far off from NAU's 166, which is a pretty wild thing to say. And all of a sudden, I think they become one of the most interesting teams to watch moving forward because they truly. I mean, I think there's still a ton of variability. I think they could the floor is probably still a little low, but they clearly prove that their ceiling is higher than what we ever could have expected for this team this year.
Where are they ranked in our next?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask this. So I was thinking about this. I don't think. I'm a little scared that they only had 5 women finish, and now granted that means there's some upside there still if all of them do finish, but it seems like the margin for error is pretty tiny. If like McCabe needs to run very well, which I mean we can expect that, but Noka needs to run very well, very very well too, for this kind of scoring structure to work. I think I have them like right outside the top 10 in my mind.
So like
maybe
like 11, 12.
11th, 12th is where I'm at.
I respect that they have the slim margin of error, but I also think that they have an extensive upside. So
yeah.
I think they just crack inside the top 10. Like I'd give them an 8, 9 kind of thing.
Okay.
Which I think we're splitting hairs there at that point.
Yeah.
But I don't totally disagree with that. I'm going to move us off of West Virginia. Notre Dame in 5th, New Mexico 6th, NC State 7th. I like this result a lot for Notre Dame because they didn't have Erin Strzelecki and they didn't have Sophie Novak. The women behind their top two, Cover and Chisholm, were awesome. But the women behind their top two were all like sophomores or freshmen, some of them red shirts, and they were super stable. Awesome, awesome job. New Mexico, Pamela Kosgei gets the win over Hilda Olabonwe and Caroline Jeptani, excuse me. Big one there. No Nicole Jansen this season, but seems like they still had a solid enough group. NC State, Grace Hartman, awesome in 6th place. Hannah Gapes, awesome in 8th place. Huge low stick result. Big drop off after that. They need another low stick. Someone maybe can close the gap. I think it could be Fiona Smith. Thoughts on those 3 teams?
Yeah, I really liked what we saw from Notre Dame. Like you said, this is a team that I don't think has a super high ceiling,
Hmm.
but they continue to prove that they're just going to be one of the more consistent teams in the country. For New Mexico, I mean, this is just how they're going to run, right? They're going to rely on Kazgai. They're going to rely on Battetti and Karari to be stable enough second and third scores, and then they just need they just need something out of those fourth and fifth runners, and Claire Des gave them a solid performance for that fourth spot. For NC State, this is again why I came in just feeling pretty nervous about this team. Is they don't have quite the depth they've had in years prior, and they also don't have the overwhelming like low sticks. Obviously, Hartman and Gapes have been great, but I just truly don't see a ton more upside out of this team than what they showed.
Are they a podium team?
I don't think they are.
It's fair. Fair. I don't think they are either. Like, 'cause, I mean, people forget, you're missing other teams here.
Yeah.
There's no Georgetown in this field. There's no Providence in this field. There's no Utah in this field. There's
No
no
Alabama.
Alabama in this
Yeah.
field. Yeah, no Alabama in this field. I mean, those are four teams that we probably think are better than NC State. Like, I think so, right?
They're gonna have a tough time finishing top 10. I
Yeah,
think they can, but
yeah,
I don't know if I predict that they will.
yeah. I mean, I think Gabe's stepping up as a low stick is huge, but the absence of
Of
Leah
Leas.
Stevens, oh, brutal. I mean, that might be the difference, frankly, between NC State being on the podium and being outside the top 10.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we talked about it coming into this week. Of they desperately need their top women, all of them, and
Mhm.
this is not an NC State team that can lose one of their top three, top four women, and they just have enough talent to overcompensate that. They needed Leah Stevens this meet desperately, and without her, they don't have the pieces to be able to supplement those top two. Looking further down the field, you had Wisconsin in eighth, in ninth Florida State, and 10th Florida. Both of our bold predictions. You had Florida, I had Furman finishing high up. Neither of those came to fruition. I think you could see with Florida the outlines, but they didn't have the firepower to be able to go all the way up to the top five.
No, I was looking mainly because it was the Allison Wilson aspect that I thought was
Yeah,
going to be a bit more impactful. I thought the contingent that they had against Creek would have at least stayed a little bit more compact and then moved up the field. It wasn't a terrible race. I still think Florida, can be happy about this result, but
sure.
I'm sure they're looking at this and being like, so you're telling us we were 4 points off of a Florida State in-state rival that we frankly should be beating after they finished what at Nuttycombe, like 17th or something like that. So I forget exactly where they placed, but yeah, I don't know. I think Florida's still pretty happy with that result. Wisconsin, great pack running, nothing too surprising there.
Yeah.
Florida State is a very frustrating team for me to kind of analyze. They were not supposed to be good this season. I came into the season being like, yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, they were 16th, excuse me, at Nuttycombe Invite, and Bieke Shepard has been a really good, nice low stick. But Agnes Petit coming back is pretty significant. She was 29th, I want to say,
Yep.
at pre nationals, and then the pack behind her has just been good enough. The new additions that they've been bringing in from the transfer portal as grad transfers, they didn't need them to be studs, but Barlow and Brooke Mullins have been awesome stabilizers, and that's ultimately been the difference of what has made Florida State competitive. It's been development of their top scorers and bringing in stability and veterans on the back end, which is credit where credit's due. It's worked, and I didn't think it would.
And it's a staple of the Florida State program, and even with the new coaching staff, is there's just a level of competence.
Yeah.
They just don't get in their own way. They figure out how to get to a decent enough score, and that's going to always put them in a solid position when you look up at the team standings. 11th Stanford. This hurt my soul a little bit.
Yeah.
I really had high expectations for this team coming into this meet. Sophia Kennedy ran very well. We didn't see Bunnage, but I mean, Riley Stewart was just bad. Like, this was a very surprising result for her, finishing 105th. And Sophia Dudek was fine, 23rd. I'm not like
That was good. I
that
thought it was a nice
upset.
result.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. It's just if you add Bunnage in there, and then Stewart is giving you a top 50 performance that we would expect her at least to be able to do, then this team looks the result looks a lot different. But the depth still is a little worrying for me. Like, they just didn't have anything. It was just two women in the top 100 is just not good.
Yeah, you had mentioned how like you hadn't read any of my analysis beforehand, and so you don't really know what my opinion is. But that was exactly what I said in the article, which was that hey, if Bunnage comes back and then Stewart runs at least like a decent bit better, like she doesn't need to be a star, but if she
No.
gets a top 60, top 50 result, I mean, this is a significantly better team performance, and we're viewing Stanford differently. But yeah, I mean, the absence of Bunnage is not great. It's kind of concerning. Like she's had some availability issues like over the last year or so. She's raced sparingly, and it's her not seeing her yet is not ideal. And I do think Stewart's going to be better, but yeah, it was not great. So
Any other teams you want to mention before we maybe touch on the individual side real quick?
no,
Yeah, I'll just mention Furman. The Bethany Graham hope I think I need to let go of a little bit.
yeah,
It just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. They finished 14th. And Carly Wilkes ran awesome, 22nd, but the rest of the squad was not quite up to what I thought they could be. On the individual side, this was a thrilling race to watch.
yeah.
I truly thought it was pretty much over coming around that last turn. I thought Olamamwe had a little bit more separation from Pamela Kosgei, but Kosgei closed that gap and closed it quick and then took off over that final straightaway. Really awesome performance. I mean, we thought that Kosgei could come in and be an immediately a top contender, and she has certainly proven that with this win over Olamamwe. And Jep Tanui from Tulane. Outstanding performance for
Mhm.
her, hanging with those two for a long time, finishing third, Kaylee McCabe fourth, and Chloe Thomas continues to be
Awesome.
one of the most impressive performers this year, finishing fifth. Any takeaways from these individual performances?
Jip Tawney is like way better than I think we realized. Like
Yeah.
way better. Kosgei, who do you have for the national? Is she your national title favorite? Slash, would you take her over Doris Lemongol right now?
No, I wouldn't.
I
I'd
would
still take
rather.
Lemon
No.
Gull.
Yeah.
I think she's earned the right of top challenger, though. I think at this point.
Is Chloe Thomas a top 10 name in the country right now?
Yes.
I think so. I don't know what we decided on the women's side. I have to go back and double check that, but I think so. Off the cuff, I think she is. Yeah.
I mean, what else can she do? Like, what else does she have to do at this point?
I don't know. I don't know, but just you always like look at these results and you're like, oh well, they're going to be at this point or do whatever, and then you actually sit down, and you have to start combing through the names, and you're like,
Yeah.
it's a little bit trickier than I thought it was. So I'm always like a little bit more hesitant about that. But let me just double check. I won't even give anything away as I take a look here. Where did we put her? I can't figure that out. I'll get back to you. I don't know what we
Okay.
did there.
Yeah. Anyway, I think she's been spectacular. She's been winning races, finishing fifth at pre-nationals against this field. It is remarkable. Grace Hartman, sixth. Peyton O, seventh. Hannah Gapes, eighth. Lexi Holiday Lowry, ninth. And as we mentioned, in 10th, Joy Nicote of West Virginia.
I'm actually really glad. Oh no. I found. Never mind. Okay. Never mind. All right. We're good. I had to think about that. Okay. What next? What's next?
All right. Let's switch to the men's side. And on the team race, we saw Arkansas take home the win in a convincing fashion over Iowa State, who finished second. And it was a slog of a day for Iowa State, but man, they came back incredibly well. I think they have to be heartened by the way they were able to close over the last 4K compared to how they started. Stanford finishing third, fulfilling some of the promise that we saw was a possibility, but they put together probably one of their best days that they've had in a long time in terms of exceeding expectations. Fourth was New Mexico, and fifth, Northern Arizona. So I know you had mentioned Iowa State was going to be your big favorite, and again, none of our bold predictions came through. But with the way they've started this race, I think you still see a lot of the upside that you saw in Iowa State before this meet.
Yeah, they didn't run Joe Ruto. Roger Skiplima was in the open race or one of the two, right? And he won narrowly, but he won. Sanel Masando can be better. I think
Mhm.
Silas Winders can be better.
Yep.
Gabel Sapierta can be a little better. I'm not saying that that's enough to beat Arkansas, but I do think that there are still avenues for them to be more competitive with Arkansas. And, I think Arkansas had a drop off at their fifth spot. So,
Yes.
regardless, like this race, in pretty much in its entirety, was a massive middle finger to me. It felt like everything that I kind of knew and assumed about the top three teams in this field were just not true. And so it was kind of tough. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I envisioned. I think Yassine Abdallah getting eighth. Like I know he ran some kind of crazy good marathon at the Olympics representing, I think, Sudan or South Sudan. I'm not sure. But him getting eighth is probably the best cross country result of his career, or if not close to it. Like it's right on the line of the All American results that he's had. So, I mean, when you have a top three like that, and then Shearer's in 18th, it doesn't really matter what the drop off is.
Right.
Like you're gonna win most times in that scenario.
Yeah, I agree. But it also kind of felt like if this was a 10K race, this becomes a lot more competitive. Of course, that's they're
Who benefits more from moving up to 10K, Iowa State or Arkansas?
So before this race, I probably would have said Arkansas, but I think the way Iowa State was able to move through this field, I think it might be Iowa State.
Okay.
I think
Okay, I don't know that yet. I think from a scoring perspective, it's Iowa State, but I think from a talent perspective, it's
Sure.
Arkansas.
Yeah. I mean, you look at like the type of runners that Arkansas has. A lot of them are more 10K specialists, where you
Yeah.
would think that would line up better with them. So yeah, I hear you. But I mean, Robin Quimo Berra continues to prove that he's the real deal for Iowa State. That fifth place finish, I think, is really exciting for them. And Patrick Kiprop, this was an awesome race for him, for Arkansas to lead the way. Let's go to Stanford. Now, Cole Sprout, I think we always thought had the ability to do this. We've seen him run this well before, but we just had not seen it for a while. He finishes ninth. Terrific result. Probably his best run that he's had in 2 years, maybe.
Yep. Yep.
Lex Young, 20th. Best cross-country NCAA performance for him. Thomas Boyden, we've seen him do this before, where he can just pop a really good race out of nowhere sometimes. And 22nd, Leo Young, solid in 43rd. And then Paul Bergeron, 48th, I think was the big one. And then Robert DiDonato, 5 places behind him in 53rd, something that, I mean, isn't out of the realm of his capability as well. You look at all these results, with the exception of Bergeron, and you're like, there's a world where I could have predicted that. But for them all to come together at the same meet and run like just very solidly across the board is not something we expected. And I don't think they have a huge ceiling beyond this, but I certainly did not expect them to be finishing third ever in this kind of quality of a field.
No, I mean, in order for this to happen, like so many different things had to go right for them. So many different things, to the point where you're just like, well, that's just not
Yeah.
realistic, right? Like you're expecting Cole Sprout to reach back to his top potential. He did that. Okay, great. But then you need another low stick to emerge in probably one of the two Young brothers. Well, Lex Young pretty much gave you that.
Yeah.
Thomas Boyden needs to suddenly, after being absent from racing for the longest time, except recently at the Gans Creek Classic, suddenly just pop up again and emerge as like the peak form of himself, which he did back in 22nd. And then you need to ensure that the young guys are not going to, and by young guys, I mean the younger underclassmen, need to like not fall off and not get overwhelmed in a field where they very easily could get overwhelmed. And they did. And DiDonato was there as insurance. Like it, everything that needed to go right went right. And that's why Stanford got third. I'll be interested to see if they can do this again. But like this is the full potential of this team. And I don't think we were wrong to be have questions, to be critical and to wonder all this, because you're asking for so much to happen, but it all happened on Saturday.
Yeah, like you said, there was a roadmap for this, but you had to hit 6 different checkpoints at the
Yeah.
perfect time for this to happen, and they did. At full credit to them. I'm curious to see what we get out of them at ACCs. I think that's going to be a pretty interesting barometer for how consistent this result is. And it's so weird to say Stanford at the ACC.
In the ACC. So, question: who's your favorite going to ACCs?
Oh, I hadn't thought of this.
I did, and I was like ACCs because let's remember, not only was Stanford third, but Notre Dame was seventh.
Yeah,
They beat NAU earlier in the season at Joe Piani, and Syracuse was eighth in this field. So here,
and North Carolina's
by the
out
way,
there.
you got North Carolina, you got Wake Forest, you got
Yeah.
Virginia.
I I think it kind of has to be either Stanford or Notre Dame.
I'm not willing to rule out Wake Forest.
That's true.
They didn't run Rocky Hansen this past week, but I don't think that's a concern. I think they're just being careful. If I
Yeah.
had to assume, um, yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think I would take. I don't know who I would take yet. I think I like Wake Forest, but I think it could literally come down to 3 teams within like 5 points.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like a high scoring team total across the board because yeah, I mean, there's so many teams. Like you could go 5-6 teams deep that probably can get to the line and say, "Hey, if everything goes right, we can win this." Like, and
Yeah.
that is not something you can have been able to say about a lot of these kind of conference meets in years past. So that'll be really exciting. I think the fact that it is that loaded of a conference, I think hopefully will give us a clearer picture on what we can expect from Stanford if they can replicate anything close to this performance 2 weeks or 2 races in a row, rather. So, yeah, I think that's all I got on Stanford. They continue to be one of the most tantalizing, interesting teams to watch year in and year out. New Mexico in 4th. Hampton Samuel taking home the win, but it was Vincent Chirchir's 11th place finish and Collins Kiprich 26th place performances that really earned them this 4th place finish. Evan Kiplagat was okay, 63rd. If he can be better, then this team has a little bit more juice to squeeze out of this lineup. And in 5th, Ruckus Van Nierkerk, 65th, I think was probably also maybe the biggest winner out of all these. It gives them a solid 5th man.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with like New Mexico is that if everyone's firing on all cylinders and everyone's at their best, this team is probably on the podium.
Yeah.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem though is that I just don't trust
No.
all 5 of these men to run well on the same day. Lucas Kiprop has not been able to. Evan Kiplagat was an All-American last year. Don't even know if he'll be top 50 this year. It's just one of those things where I'm like, man, if everyone clicks, this is the team that I would like least want to face as like an underdog. But yeah, I mean, it's a good result. What % chance are you giving them to be on the podium right now?
Ooh. I'll give them like a 15% chance.
I was also going to say 15. Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, quite frankly, a lot of the podium contenders that we thought were locked in aren't looking quite as good as maybe we thought they were.
What?
I thought NAU was a lock to be a podium favorite. Now I don't
I
think so.
definitely did not think that they were a
Not
lock.
like coming into this year, I'm saying.
Right,
And so,
I did
oh
not think they
really?
were. I think I said at the remember we had this conversation.
Okay.
I was like, I don't see them being a podium team. I mean, I certainly didn't see them being a lock. That's for
Well,
sure.
yeah, that lock is probably strong, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously Oklahoma State and BYU are out there, but I mean, Iowa
I
State,
mean, Arkansas and Iowa State. I mean, like
yeah,
I don't know, trying to get around them. I mean, I get that they were only what 40 some 38 points back from
yeah,
Iowa State, but you're asking a lot
yeah,
out of New Mexico.
yeah. No, that's certainly fair, and yeah, Arkansas putting down this performance certainly feels like they've taken claim to at least one of those spots. So yeah, I hear you on that. Moving to Northern Arizona, I was not worried about this team after the Joe Piani performance. I am pretty worried now. They just David Malarkey led the line 21st, Colin Salmon 23rd, Santiago Prosser 25th. They don't seem to really have a fifth at the moment, and they also don't really have a true low stick at the moment. And that those feel somewhat correctable. I gotta believe that they're gonna have a better fifth scorer than someone finishing 73rd at pre-nats. Malarkey, I feel like, has the potential of being better than 21st, but we're starting to do a lot of ifs and buts. And when you're getting to that point, you just don't have a ton. That leaves me to not have a ton of confidence in their ability to be a top 5 team at the national.
I disagree vehemently with you.
Oh,
I
interesting.
think this was a good result.
Oh,
I
okay.
think this is not a thing to panic at all. And I think I feel better about, I said it in the article, I think this is I feel better about their chances to be on the podium. I still don't,
Hmm.
well, one, don't think they're favorites, but I feel better about their chances of being on the podium now than I did.
Why do
Colin
you feel
Song,
better? Because I don't feel like any of these performances from anyone really made me feel better about any individuals that
well,
maybe
let's
Salmon,
walk.
but
Right. I mean, Salmon, like, if you take Salmon's result of 23rd, well, he was what at Joe Piani? 20th? I mean,
yeah.
23rd at pre nationals versus 20th is way better.
Yeah.
Santiago Prosser, he didn't finish last race.
E-
Now he's 25th, and he's one of the best postseason runners in the
but that's
NCAA.
my point. I was never that worried about him. Like this doesn't change my opinion on him that much.
So then what are we worried about? We know that Malarkey can be better. We know that for a fact. Like he was fourth at Joe Piani, which is like top half All American caliber. Yes, he didn't have his best day, but it's not like he ran poorly either, right? And then you kind of go a little bit further back. Corey Gorgas at 36, and at least he's showing some stability. I'm just not worried. I'm just really not. Like, okay, you still got Kang Neok and Justin Keys, and there's just dudes here. I'm just Corey. Actually, Kel Grotenquist, I don't think ran all
He
that
did
well,
not
but
run. No.
no, he did not run. Okay, well, even so, I'm really not like I don't know how you look at this result and you're any less high on your than after Joe Piani. Like what has changed that has hurt their stock now compared to Joe Piani?
I guess the difference between how we're seeing this is I was expecting a step forward. This feels like a pretty like similar performance to Joe Piani.
I think this is a step forward.
I don't know.
You got
I don't
four
know if
guys in
I
the
agree
top
with that.
40. You have three in the top 25, and you have four in the top 40.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Like I just I think
I don't know how you look at this result and not think that it's noticeably better than Joe Piani.
yeah, I just don't feel like I saw anything from anybody outside of Salmon that makes me think that there's like a lot more juice in this lineup. I guess.
And maybe there's not,
I
but
just don't
like
see it.
I don't know, like Gorgas in 36. Actually, he was also pretty decent at Joe Piani, but yeah, I don't know. I
I think we just came in looking at NAU very differently into this race. I think I was a lot
yeah,
higher on them coming in. And
you
I think
were
you were a lot lower. So like I think we're gonna be we probably think pretty similarly of this team at this point, but I just
We
see
do.
it more negatively than you do. Whereas you're seeing, oh, this seems better than I thought coming into this grade.
Okay, how about this? We'll play this game. What percent chance do you think they can get on the podium? And we will each say what our answer is, right? To kind of
Okay.
did. All right.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
20.
25.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, I think we actually probably feel pretty similarly about this team at this point,
Yeah, we do.
but we're just coming at it from two different angles. So, yeah, I guess I had a lot more hope that they would be a podium, like maybe not a podium favorite, but a team that had like a 50-50 shot at it. And this, I don't know how you look at this result and think that anymore. So I guess that's where
Yeah,
that's
I don't think that. You're
yeah.
correct. I don't think that, but I do think it was better. So, all right, I'm moving us off. Wisconsin, sixth place, 199. 2 points behind them was Notre Dame. Eighth place, Syracuse. You did say, hey, watch out for Syracuse. That
Yep.
was your sleeper. Nice call on that one. Thoughts on those results?
Yeah, I continue to be very impressed with the underclassmen for Wisconsin. Liam
Yep.
Newart, 39th, Matan Avery, 54th. You had Bob Liking showcasing his low stick abilities, which was awesome to see. Rowan Ellenberg was awesome. Michael Wilson, very good. I mean, Adam Spencer was terrible in this race, and it didn't matter. He gives them a little more upside if he's firing on all cylinders. I think you have to be pretty happy with this result if you're Wisconsin. For Notre Dame, this was why this is the exact result where this isn't a bad result by any means, but why I did not want to get super like excited about them after Joe Piani. Like seventh place, and like Carter Solomon looked like Carter Solomon from like
Yeah,
3 years ago, finally
finally.
finishing
Yeah.
12th, which is awesome. And you look through the rest of the lineup, it's all a lot of solid performances. Coleman and Sturry were good. Kevin Sanchez had a great day, 59. I think we saw like the top end of what Notre Dame can be at Joe Piani, and I think this was a little bit below that. Still a very good team, top 10 team in the country, but I don't think they have a massive amount of upside, and I think that this kind of race proved it.
Yeah, I don't I don't know if I'm ready to say that they don't have a ton of upside. I think a smaller field at ACCs is going to be more beneficial to
I
them.
agree. I agree, and I think that's
Yeah.
why I could see them as like the favorite because one, they're just going to be that I trust them to have a level of consistency that Stanford doesn't, and I think they can pack up and just have a lot more men in like the top 15, where having like a superstar low stick isn't, or not having a superstar low stick isn't going to hurt them as much as it would in this field.
Well, that is like I also think Dalian Ackley is going to be better.
Sure. I mean, yeah,
In
CJ
an
Singleton
ACC
could be
type
better.
field.
Like, yeah,
Yeah,
there's guys that can be
Singleton. I've been saying that the last couple of weeks. He just hasn't, but
good.
like that's okay. Yeah, I mean overall, like it is what it is. Like I'm not totally shocked by this. Syracuse, it's the least sexiest result, but like they got it done, and who cares?
They
Kind
did
of
it
thing.
exactly how I thought they would. Just like a glut of people like within the top 70. And that nothing like Sam Lawler, I think, had a really good day, finishing 34th. But they just kind of packed up and did enough to secure that 8th place finish.
Here's a fun fact, by the way, before oh wow. So I don't know when this time frame was, but I saw this fact from someone outside of the COVID season, where the New York system like regulated practicing and things like that. The Syracuse men have never not been first or second at ACCXC. I don't know from when to when that was. I don't know if that's all time. I struggle to believe that's all
Yeah.
time. But if that's just something to consider after seeing them place eighth. So I guess they're on a streak. I don't know when that streak started, but it's definitely been before COVID. So
Well, and again, they're a team that isn't going to in a smaller field isn't going to be hurt by not having that true front runner that
right.
that
And
definitely
Lawler
hurt
can
them.
still be that guy.
Yeah, and I mean he still should be I mean top 10 guy at ACCs. It's just yeah, they hope if they can pack up right behind him like they did, then they certainly have a shot at being super competitive, if not winning ACCs. California Baptist in ninth again, like So
So
good.
frustrating. I hate
Like,
this.
like
How
they,
dare they be good?
their top two guys just are so good. Um, and yeah, I'm very impressed by what they're doing. Harvard in 10th. This is kind of the structure, except for Ben Rosa hasn't even been very good. Like if he's good, then I think this is a team that looks a lot more potent. And then Utah State 11th, Wyoming 12th. I thought Wyoming put in a solid performance. Could have been I would have liked that they would have beaten Utah State, but other than that, I think they ran pretty well.
Yeah, no, I thought these were all good results. I think this was the section where I felt a little bit better about some of our suspicions, mainly with Wyoming.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I mean, I think Furman, we were like, hey, this is a better team and than what they showed, and Schubert came back and he was impactful. And I'm sorry, no, Carson Williams
Carson
actually
Williams
was
was
the more
awesome.
impactful. Yeah,
Yeah.
but Schubert came back and he was still impactful in 40th place. So yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to mention here though.
Colorado, Eastern Kentucky, Butler, some of our more interesting teams and teams that we were higher on kind of just laid an egg.
Wait.
Yeah, tough,
Yeah.
tough for some of our.
I'm not like my thing with Colorado is just like it's such a weird year where I'm like like give it a year, come back and next year we'll see how this goes kind of thing.
Dean
Eastern
Casey looked
Kentucky,
good.
it's also yeah, he did. It's almost like as if someone predicted him to be like a top half All-American later in this fall, which he's trending in that direction through two meets. Through two meets, he's trending in that direction. But Eastern Kentucky also, like, they didn't have Taha Everyway,
Yeah, they didn't have
and they
everybody.
didn't have Muhammad Janori either. So, work with what you got, I guess. But
From the individual race, Hampton Samuel kind of did what Blanks did at Nuttycombe last year, where just sat in the top group, made a hard move, and just left everybody in
yep,
the dust and
yep.
looked spectacular doing it. I'm going to be really interested to see those two and Parker Wolf go head to head, and then maybe some of the Oklahoma State guys get in the picture as well. I think it's going to be a really interesting individual race at nationals. And hey, if history tells us anything, the winner of these like pre-nats at Wisconsin or Nuttycombs has a very good shot at taking home the national title.
Rank these four men in order:
Okay.
Brian Masau of Oklahoma State, Parker Wolf UNC, Graham Blanks Harvard, and Hampton Samuel of New Mexico.
I think I'll go Samuel, Blanks, Wolf, Masau.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Because remember, Masau did beat Samuel.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm letting like last year's performances with Masau, who was good last year, but wasn't like with this group.
He wasn't a title contender.
Yeah,
no.
exactly. I think that's coloring a lot of my perspective on him.
Sure. Yeah.
To be honest with you, I wouldn't disagree with anybody like reversing that. Like you could jumble that up in a million different ways, and I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer there.
Okay, that's fair. I don't necessarily disagree. I still haven't decided, frankly.
Justine Kipkoech of Eastern Kentucky was fantastic, finishing third. Patrick Kiprop fourth, and as we mentioned, Robin Kwemobera of Iowa State fifth. I think for just I mean, we've talked about all these other guys except for Kipkoech. I think if he can be this kind of low stick, and like we said, if Eastern Kentucky gets all their guys back, that he gives them just a level of potency that they really haven't had ever. Honestly, I mean, James Segura was like the one guy that we thought could be maybe this competitive in this kind of field, and even he wasn't this kind of level. So I think he can. Kipkoech gives them a very interesting ceiling moving forward.
Man, did you say?
Yeah,
James Segura.
Yeah.
Oh man, am I blanking on who? Am I getting him mixed up with Ezekiel Robb?
No, yeah. So James Segura, yeah, he ran from. Let's see, I'm trying to remember.
He was 14th at 20. Oh, and he was 4th at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Nuttycombe in 2018.
Yeah,
I forgot about him. Yeah, I think I assumed that he was in that same era as Robb when they both were like studs. And yeah.
No, he was
Not sure.
awesome. I mean, when he was at his best, he was one of the best in the country. But I think Kip Coach is even another level better than what Segura was at for Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to go back and take a closer look, and I also don't know if we saw enough of Segura for as long as we did.
Yeah,
But
that's true. Absolutely true. All right. Anything else on pre-nats before we move on?
no, let's go to Princeton.
All right, let's go to Princeton. We'll go on the women's side. Georgetown taking down Providence by 6 points. Kimberly May taking home the individual win by 7 seconds over Chloe Scrimger. Georgetown, I mean, both of these teams just look very potent. I don't think either of these two teams would have been out of place at pre-nationals. I just wish we could have seen them in that race because I think they could have been top. What do you think? Top 4 at least at pre-nats.
No.
You don't think?
Oh wait. What are we talking about specifically? What
Sorry,
race specifically?
Georgetown and Providence.
I'm sorry. I thought you were saying Kimberly May and
No,
Chloe Scrimger.
I don't think that. Yeah,
I think like maybe a healthy Scrimger at her best.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Top 4. They're top 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we learned from either of these teams other than that they're very good. I wish we could have seen who am I thinking of? Flockhart, maybe a touch higher, but that's like
Yeah.
me like picking
But she was
this.
still part of that main pack of
Yeah.
stars. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Exactly.
there really wasn't a drop off from like you look at these times and like you look at like how they ran and like I saw like a few clips of like all of them running together and like it goes May, Scrimger, Florence Caron, Lucy Jenks, Alex Millard, Phoebe Anderson, Bryn Brown, Melissa Reagan, Sadie Sixstead, and Shannon Flockhart. And you kind of go there and you're like, yeah, you could put those women in a bunch of different orders
Yeah.
and I wouldn't be surprised about it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Lucy Jenks continues to be really, really good for Georgetown. 4th place performance for her. That was huge, and probably ultimately is what that won them this race. Honestly, Florence Caron of Penn State finishing 3rd. Really good performance for them. They nearly beat North Carolina for that 3rd spot. North Carolina scoring 120. Penn State 128. Villanova in 5th with 141. I think all these teams have to be fairly happy with their performances. I think North Carolina probably wishes they were closer to that 100-point mark, but Bryn Brown ran really well, and Fatima Alanis, another good performance from her. I think this is going to be, for North Carolina, it's going to be kind of a rotating cast behind in those last spots, and they have the talent where someone can pop at the national meet and give them a certainly higher result than maybe what we're predicting right
now. Yeah, that's a fair point. Oh, I had a point I was trying to make, and I completely blanked on what it was.
Sorry, I monologued for too long.
No. Here is what it was. Out of the top 10 women of this field, right? All those women who I just listed, how many of them do you think are going to be All-Americans?
Give me 6.
6. So who's the 4 you're leaving out?
So I think it's I think it's Bryn Brown. Oh man, this is tough. I think,
I was gonna say only 6. Like
I don't know if I completely buy Jenks as an All-American. Granted, she just did finish 4th. I don't think Flockhart. I might go with 7 actually. All right, because I think Sadie Sixstead didn't have her best day, and I think she can be an All-American. So yeah, I'll go with 7.
Okay.
How about you?
Yeah. Probably 8, and I think there's going to be one of these women who just flat out has a tough day,
Right?
And like
Yeah, of course.
Just struggles for no reason in particular. I think Flockhart's probably my other one who I'm like, I don't think she's quite there. I think she's better than she has been in the past, but I don't think she's quite there yet. And then someone's just going to have like just a crazy tough day. I could see it being Bryn Brown. I could see it being Alex Millard. I could see it being Florence Caron. Like, just in terms of like the inexperience of that top level,
Sure.
or not being at that top level recently, or not being in the NCAA recently. Those are all the things that I think come into play there. So I'll say 8 of those top 10 are all Americans.
I mean, it's crazy that in any non like pre-nats nutty-comb race that we're saying if you like 70 or 80% of the top 10 in a field are we think are all Americans. Like
This is a
that
great field.
yeah,
This is great.
exactly. It's just shows you that the top end talent in this field that we think could account for 20% nearly of the All Americans. And it's certainly not 20% of the national teams in attendance at this meet. So it is just a reflection of how top heavy a lot of these squads are. Anything else from this women's race?
Let's go to the men.
All right, let's go to the men. Villanova taking home the win by 17 points over Georgetown, who finished second. Princeton third, North Carolina fourth. Ethan Strand taking home the individual win. Parker Wolf did not run, correct? Yeah.
I don't believe so.
So you throw Parker Wolf in this, and North Carolina basically ties or is like a point behind, or right, like ties with Villanova. So
yeah.
I think a solid performance from them as well. Colton Sands, great performance in sixth place. That was big for North Carolina.
Does this tell us more about Villanova, or does it tell us more about UNC?
See, I don't think it tells us a whole lot about either. I think Villanova, because Bailey Habler's performance in ninth, I think that is probably the most impactful performance out of any of these teams. If he can be that good, then this team has another gear to it that at the beginning of the season we just didn't think they would have outside of their top two.
I agree. I also think Villanova's like back end, their fourth spots, while far from perfect,
were better.
Was like better. I thought it was an improvement. It wasn't amazing, but it was better. Georgetown in second overall. They went 7, 11, 14, 17, 38. They're definitely going to be ranked, but where are they going to be ranked?
I probably like 18 to 20. Does that feel about right to you?
Well, if you've checked the
Slack, I have not.
You know.
I have not. I know you sent something and I haven't looked at it. So this is me completely eyeballing it.
Well, you're pretty spot on. I'll just give you that. So yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, this is my day of not looking at anything before coming in, and it's proven to be good for conversations. I think
it's great content. I mean, I'll just give you that. So, okay, cool. What else? What else on this?
Dominic Sarum of Toledo, really good performance for third. Toledo obviously not on our radar, but he could be someone that earns an individual qualifying spot if he can perform like this at the Great Lakes region.
Dylan Throop as well in Mid-Atlantic. He was from Penn. Fifth place, got injured, I think, last year, I want to say. But fourth at Paul Short, fifth at Princeton Fall Classic. I like him. I think he's a guy on the rise. He was seventh at pre-nationals last year, second at Ivy Leagues. Watch out for him. He's pretty good.
Absolutely. Anything else?
That is it, I think.
I think that's it. Now,
that's it.
We talked about how coming into this meet, this is going to determine a lot of our thoughts going into the national meet, and so we got to think through this a little bit more. Obviously, there's going to be conferences, especially with the conferences getting so much bigger and those fields being a lot deeper, that will probably like we talked about with Stanford on the Stanford men's side, that will probably change our thoughts a little bit. But this like ranking update, which I think you'll probably be able to read by the time that the podcast comes out.
Yep.
It is really what we think about these teams going into the national meet. Obviously, there's going to be some adjustments along the way, but this is a huge weekend, and I think there was a lot of teams that just dramatically improved their stock. There were some that obviously did not, but I think we have a whole new lens from which to look at the NCAA from, and we're going to be talking about that up into the national meet, which is really exciting to think about.
Yeah, no, it's going to be very exciting. I mean, go check out the site. First Thoughts article on the entire top half of the men's and women's fields from pre-nationals offered analysis, just a couple hours after that meet ended, or at least as reasonably quickly as after that meet ended. And then we, of course, team rankings, individual rankings, a lot of great shakeups. I felt like we really put like a really solid thought and effort into revamping all of it. So I'm really proud about how they'll come out, and especially when Ben actually takes a look at it in the Slack group chat. So, but no, I'm excited about it. So a lot of good stuff coming up. A lot of big D2, D3 weekend coming up as well. But I think for the time being, that is it.
All right. Well, until next week, Garrett, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.